Yes, everyone has conflict, no question. And as homeschool moms, I think we don't always want to because it gets exasperating. And when you do it as often as we do, I think sometimes we in our minds think, I'm providing you this beautiful life experience. So I'm wondering if you could not make it difficult for me. Or at least that's been my experience. So today I'm going to offer you a plan to address that homeschool kid conflict. Banish it? No, I can't do that. I would like to. I very much would like to. I think this is the least exciting part of homeschooling. It's the most challenging part. And when I've spoken to you about what I found the most difficult for myself, it is managing my own big emotions in response to this. I might have my unique reasons why feeling and experiencing conflict is even more challenging. I don't think I'm unique. I think there's a lot of people that grew up in a really conflict-based home. There was a lot of conflict, and so we either repel or we learn how to fight or we learn how to shut down. But because of that repeated experience that many grown-up parents have, when they go into their own home and they're addressing conflict with their kids, it feels overwhelming. It feels too much. And there's some part of us that often feels like, this is my family. This shouldn't be happening. And yet the reality is we're humans, and humans have needs. Humans have needs that are not addressed. Humans have big feelings. Humans have big feelings that are not always addressed. And I say that because that is the core of nonviolent communication. Have any of you heard of nonviolent communication outside of a discussion with me? You can, during this seminar, just mention or share in the comments if you like. So the reason why I bring up the concept of nonviolent communication, this is a Marshall Rosenberg concept. It's a book that he even says, he declares that it is hard for him to have named this discussion because it elicits a feeling of either help, yes, there's violence in my family, which is good, or violence in my country, because he has addressed some big conflicts like Middle Eastern conflicts. He's actually been a hostage negotiator in various parts in the world. So inside people's homes and also inside, state to state or country to country conflicts. And it both welcomes people to identify that indeed this would be for them. But then on the other hand, some of us look at the nonviolent communication language and say, well, I'm not violent in my home, so I don't want to address conflict with my kids bickering on a homeschool level as though it's violent. But he would suggest that it's all violent if it's not really embracing and holding people's needs and feelings. So I believe this introduction to nonviolent communication is so important in our homeschool families because it has been both transformative for me in my approach to my partner, my kids, and even to myself. It helps us to resolve conflicts more peacefully, to create more positive relationships and atmosphere in our homes. And really, it helps us to learn how to continually interact amongst siblings. And for us, we need to be proactive in really greasing the wheel of that, because as you know, it's constant or at least it's continual. If it's not a daily occurrence in your home, it's enough of an experience for you because you are with your kids all the time. You notice it more. And they are in relationship with each other. If they were in a school scenario, they would have conflict too, but it would be different and you wouldn't be watching it all the time. So there's a couple dynamics there. There's how you are involved in it and how they engage each other. This you all know. So what we're going to do in this workshop is first talk about understanding kid conflict in your homeschool environment, learn about the significance of teaching relational power and conflict resolution skills, excuse me, the basics of NVC, and the practical strategies to include it. And then we're going to have a conversation, a Q&A, a discussion about any specific scenarios you want. That'll be off camera, so it won't be recorded, and we'll be able to discuss openly if you're comfortable. And if you're not, that's cool too. I can pull from many, many scenarios in my own life to discuss, and how I incorporated practical things from the NVC communication approach. Does anyone have any questions or want to share anything? Okay. So I'm sure you're all very familiar with conflict in your home, in your home schools especially. I think when kids go to school, they don't lack for conflict, but they are not there with you all day long. The siblings that your children have are the ones that they're going to learn how to relate to. And that's super key in this discussion. The whole point of conflict is to help kids learn who they are, what they need, what their feelings are, and also learn what other people's needs are, their feelings, and learn how to express those things in a way that another person can hear. So when I share that, I'm sure you're thinking the same thing that I'm thinking. This clearly is not happening in an hour. This is going to be a lifetime thing. And we know that because we experience conflict. So we know that conflict resolution skills and building strong relationships doesn't happen in an hour, and it doesn't happen, in a week of discussions with our kids, because we grow up and we become our age and we're still having conflict with other people. But we can look at that conflict as something negative and uncomfortable, which it can be uncomfortable, of course, but we can look at it as a bad thing and then want to banish it. Or we can look at it as inevitable, just like gravity, and we must learn to engage it as best as we know how in the moment in a healthy, proactive approach. Because at the end of the day, when we teach them these skills, we're helping them become peaceful people, how they engage other people, how they feel or think about themselves, because they're learning to address their needs and their feelings, and then therefore becoming empathic and more compassionate with other people and with themselves. This, by the way, this approach was anything but intuitive for me in the beginning. My instinct was conflict, stop it, just stop. That was my instinct. Because for me, growing up in a high conflict home, it scared me. I felt threatened. In fact, I had such a fight or flight kind of reaction inside that my instinct was just to, no, you can't do that. Be kind, just be nice. That was my instinct. Until I began to really, for various reasons, that notion that I could just shut it down with a quick stop it didn't work. It wasn't working. In fact, it sometimes made it worse, because some kids will comply and they will just be quiet and they will just stop, especially under threat, whether that's like physical threat or taking away screens or taking away a variety of things, whatever matters to the child, it will get them to stop. But in their soul, in their heart, it doesn't necessarily convey the most important things for them, that they actually really need to listen to other people and care about what other people think. Now, I know that there is a set of 3-year-old twins represented in our discussion here today. And we know that as 3-year-olds, we are not even like processing this discussion about, okay, let's talk about your feelings and what do you need? That's at a different level of communication than most 3-year-olds, excuse me, will be sharing from, because they don't have that clarity. Honestly, I was 34 and I didn't have that clarity. So as a 3-year-old, they might not have the language to it, but when we put language to the experiences that they're having and we listen to them and we show them we're listening to them, they will grow up over the series of a couple decades to understand that their feelings matter, their needs matter. And when they know that about themselves, they really will naturally look at the others and go, okay, what do you feel? What do you need? Because they'll recognize themselves in other people. This is sort of like a reverse of self-compassion that I speak to. It's about being compassionate to yourself, but also to others. So our goal is to promote a positive environment, both because we want our kids to grow up and learn, to build stronger relationships, learn how to deal with conflict, also know how to resolve their own sense of stress or anxiety. I know for myself, coming from a high conflict home, the learning environment at school, even though it was a different environment than my home, I was not able to learn as well. Things were not, I couldn't put my emotional mental space clearly into math class because it was so flustered inside of my brain. Now there's like a neuroanatomy discussion here. This is actually proven by science. This is not just an experiential thing, but I know what it's like on the experiential side. And as soon as I went to college away from home, my GPA rose significantly. And I wasn't trying harder. I just wasn't under that stress. And though I have never gone back to high school math to try to conquer that, I'm confident that I would be able to embrace certain concepts that would have felt like a big fog to me back, 30, 40 years ago. I mean, 10. Anyway, a while ago. So these are what the reasons why I believe we want to talk about nonviolent communication as a way to address sibling bickering. This continues the same conversation really, except to discuss the concept of self-advocacy, that you are really looking to ask yourself, what do you need? The tricky thing in relationships and families is that it's a beautiful opportunity for us to both connect with other people, to be seen and heard by other people, to matter to other people in their lives. And also being independent, to be separate from them at the same time, is necessary for good mental health. That concept, I spoke about it in my book. It's called self-differentiation. And I think it's one of the most difficult things that we can do in our meaningful relationships, is to invite others to be authentically them, want us to be authentically us, and also connect with the most important people. It's tricky. The concepts I'm sure you've heard of before, unhealthy boundaries or enmeshment, codependency, they've been kind of buzzwords in the last few decades that embody unhealthy relationships. The tricky thing I see is that we live in such an independent world. We assume that independence is the best way to approach life. And on one hand it is, but we need people. We were built to be with people, community, connection. We were meant for that. So learning how to be separate, but also in community, it's the challenge. That concept of self-differentiating, I think, is a lifelong experience. We have to learn how to be fully ourselves and invite others to be fully themselves. And we're going to then teach our kids how to advocate for themselves. You can see that incorporating skills that will teach you to consider other people and also your own feelings and needs means you're likely to build healthier relationships. You're going to have an emotional intelligence, but even the ability to have greater success in your future. If you listen to my podcast episode this last week, I share 5 different research um, uh, research articles about these things that actually, if you have a higher EQ, you are likely to be more successful in the future in making money, in providing for your family, in building a business, in engaging in your professional world. You'll have more success in those things because you have a higher emotional intelligence. We will be discussing the book Emotional Intelligence by Daniel Goleman. That is kind of like the big book of discussion around this. He began all those research studies, and it is just such compelling understanding. It's just like a baseline for how we want to approach our families. So this is essentially the 6 basic elements of the nonviolent communication approach. And you might look at these and say, interesting. These could just as well be common conversation points, and they are in the general culture that we want to learn to be empathic, we want to actively listen, we want to learn how to express our feelings and our needs, we want to empower choice both for ourselves and other people, we want to learn how to collaboratively problem solve, and we want to set boundaries. I'll just go into one of the points here about active listening. If you've heard this concept of active listening, it really just means when someone says something, I'll use the example from the podcast episode. One of the kids comes to me and says, Mom, so-and-so is bugging me because she is saying that purple dinosaurs are dancing in the corner. There's more to that on the episode, funnier on the episode, but purple dinosaurs are dancing in the corner. And I, of course, when I first hear this, go, oh, brother, conflict again. I wanted us to do this activity and I put so much effort into this, and we have to get out the door at 3 o'clock to go to violin lessons or dance or soccer or hockey, or you fill in the blank. And we don't have time for this. That's what goes through my head, which is true. I don't want to make time for this plenty of the time. And anyway, purple dinosaurs are dancing in the corner. So apparently I need to address this. I think to myself, but of all the possible conflict points you could be discussing, why this one? Why is this one the one you're talking about? This is inane. Like, talk about world peace, talk about the economy, talk about politics. Just kidding. They're 3 and 5. What else are they going to talk about? They're going to talk about purple dinosaurs. Okay. So I'm going to say to the child, okay, so, and I won't use my own kids' names because this will go public, but I'll say, okay, Janice. Okay, so Janice, you said to her that purple dinosaurs are dancing in the corner, and she was upset with you. That's active listening, just saying back to the person that is speaking with heat or anger or frustration or complaining, and return exactly what you heard them say. If this involved your partner and your partner is animated and frustrated about something and it has something to do with you, you could just as easily, no, not easily, you could also use this concept. You could say, okay, so you just said you wanted me to wash the car before I came home from town with the groceries, and I didn't do it, and you are frustrated. That, as you can imagine, is a practice, especially with your partner, almost more challenging because it's a threat of attachment. But I'll go into that discussion if you want to have a conversation with me privately about partnering relationships. This is actually where I learned this primarily in the beginning, was through partnering relationship, and then brought it in to the family environment. So the only goal with active listening is for you to really say, I heard you say this. It doesn't mean you agree. It doesn't mean you agree that there are purple elephants dancing in the corner. It does not mean you agree that you should have washed the car before you came home. It just means you have acknowledged that you have heard what the other person is saying. So I'll move to the next discussion point. It is this, that ultimately this NVC communication approach helps to build deeper empathy. So I'm going to ask, tell me more about these purple dinosaurs. So tell me about why you were talking about purple dinosaurs. And I don't know what the reason would be, but randomly, well, on Sid the Science Kid, they were talking about this. And then I said that I saw this purple dinosaurs dancing in the corner. And then she said that it wasn't purple dinosaurs, it was pink dinosaurs. And then we were, bickering back and forth. No, it was pink. No, it was purple. No, it was pink. No, it was purple. And you're going, okay, I feel really intense in here because I don't have time for this and we need to get out, but we need to have this thing finished. And I feel really tense, but I'm just going to take a deep breath. Or if I can't hold it in the moment, the intensity of the scenario, that I feel a sense of urgency or stress or frustration, then I'm going to leave the room and just say, okay, I've heard what you've had to say. Give me 5 minutes. I'll be back. Or if you can hold the emotion in the moment, then you turn to that child and you try to give them a sense of empathy in the moment and say, okay, tell me more about this thing. If you can put your hand on their shoulder, or if you can look into their eyes, or if you can just be calm and quiet with them, be tender with them, show them the thing that they need. Because when any of us, your partner, your children, are feeling an intensity that requires, listen, 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 this is so important, it means that someone doesn't feel listened to. And as soon as you show them that listening and that kindness, their intensity decreases. So there should be a circle here showing a pie of how much each of these elements contribute to navigating conflict. I can't say that any of them are particularly 16.7%, but I do know that each one of them is super important, that we need to show the empathy toward our kids. We need to listen to them wholeheartedly, both allowing them to express, hey, so tell me what you need from your sister. And there might be different responses. They might have no idea how to answer that. But even you putting vocabulary to their intensity means that you are honoring that they have a need. Or if they're a little bit older and they say, well, just feel like she doesn't listen to me. Okay, so you have the need to feel listened to. I can imagine that conversation point with two of my older kids, them, and in fact, it has happened even not that long ago, saying, okay, here's why this matters to me, and I need you to engage it in this way. Are you willing to do that? That's the long-term goal, is to get them to the place of recognizing their needs and feelings so they can put it into words, make a request, and then together collaborate to determine what the plan will be next time. And this setting boundaries concept, it can come in many forms, but one thing I would say is your kids learn that each other must not hit each other. Listen, this is my body, so you cannot hit my body. I will not hit yours, or I will not call you names that will make you feel disrespected. And I ask you not to disrespect me, or this is my bedroom, or this is my space in my bedroom. And you need to ask me if you want to use my, I don't know, magnetic set or Lego set or something before you take it. And even though I hope you understand, really get from me here today that all of these things that we're talking about, they will not happen in a 1-hour block. They will most definitely not happen even in 18 years. They will be a setup to create a plan to address conflicts for the rest of their lives. So nonviolent communication is a simple yet powerful methodology for communicating in a way that meets both parties' needs. It focuses on what really matters, connecting with our own humanity and the humanity of others. So I'm going to stop the conversation or stop this workshop and then have a conversation about incorporating practical strategies that you can use inside your homes, because I know that you've probably both experienced this today. I haven't, but that's because my kids are mostly grown up and no one is having an opportunity of conflict with each other. But I have had so much conflict over the course of my 2+ decades of mothering and managing it and looking at it and noticing it, that I have many stories and also much experience to know that there are a lot of opportunities for conflict. So thank you for joining me. And if you want to join me for a no obligation conversation to discuss how you can create a plan to address the conflict in your home and to also have a gentle accountability partner so that you can have me walk alongside you to get you to practice these things for yourself, then join me and I will make sure to grab you a booking link for that. Do you know what I wanted to share, ladies, is there is an entire YouTube channel from Marshall Rosenberg on nonviolent communication. And he is very easy to follow, to understand, especially the first 5 or so, probably the first 5 or so videos. And there's also 3 podcast episodes on my Homeschool Mama Self-Care podcast that I go into deep or depth on this concept of nonviolent communication because I think it's so useful in the home. There's also a specific YouTube channel called Cup of Empathy, where you can watch a coach, a mom coach, do this process with her 2 younger kids. And she happens to be videoing all day long. She shares with you that she is actually looking for an opportunity to do this. So she's got loads of tape she has to edit. And then, of course, she has an opportunity where her kids are fighting and she shows how to do it. And I think it's a really powerful video. Of course, I recommend the book, Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. And of course, you can book a conversation with me to learn how to incorporate these concepts, either in your partnering relationship or with your kids. So thank you for being here. I'm going to stop the recording and we'll have a private conversation.